Hi all, Mrs. Arndt here. So today in this video, we're going to take a look at some dimensioning standards. And then we're going to practice dimensioning on the part that we created the last 2 days with the drill block. So for starters, in order for the drawings to be dimensioned so that all people can understand them, we have to follow standards that every company in the world must follow. So there are lots of different standards. Different organizations create dimensioning standards. So a lot of people go with ANSI standard, but there are also military standards. The Department of Defense has their own. So typically ANSI is used by everybody in North America. The ISO is more of a worldwide organization that creates engineering standards. And there are about 100 countries that participate with ISO. You can read through these or pause and read through these if you would like. So of course, just a quick reminder on the dimensioning components that are out there. The dimensioning text, of course, that's where we see our numbers. The extension lines are the straight lines that come off of the part. And then the dimension lines are the pieces with the arrowheads to show what we are dimensioning in between. As far as text guidelines, if the dimension will not fit between the extension lines, it can be placed outside of them. And Inventor does that automatically. We'll have to kind of check out what Onshape is going to do for us today. So we definitely want it to be placed in the middle. All good. Dimensions can be represented in one of two systems, unidirectional or aligned. Unidirectional means that all dimensions are read in the same direction. So, well, how we read things on a paper. But the aligned method means that the dimensions are read in alignment with the dimension lines or the side of the part. So some are going to be read horizontally, however, others will be flipped 90 degrees and read vertically. So you can see the difference here. On the left, we have the unidirectional. On the right, we have the aligned. So when is each one used? Well, typically in mechanical drafting, the type of engineering we're doing, we're going to use the unidirectional type. On the right, the aligned style is often used in architectural and structural drafting. So if you're looking at blueprints for a building, oftentimes they will be drawn up with the aligned dimensions. I've also seen it where the aligned is used frequently for the metric system. So there is that option as well. The other two types of dimensioning that we're going to look at are called chain dimensioning and datum dimensioning. So chain dimensioning, dimensions from feature to feature, it's very common. And there are a couple of different ways where you can either dimension from one to another and then also use the overall width or height. That's method 2. It is the preferable chain dimensioning method. So you omit one partial dimension in the chain, but make sure to dimension the overall height, length, or width to limit manufacturing inaccuracies. The second type is datum dimensioning. So dimensioning from a single point of origin is called datum dimensioning. It reduces dimensional deviations in manufactured parts because each size or location dimension is referenced to a single point. So we commonly use the lower left point as our kind of starting point, and then every piece is dimensioned from that leftmost edge or from the bottommost edge. So we're going to head on over to Onshape, and we're going to strictly use the unidirectional style, but we're going to dimension one drawing file using chain dimensioning, and we're going to dimension the other one using datum dimensioning. So let's head on over to Onshape. Go into Unit 7. We're going to open that same drill block document that we've been working on. So here it has loaded our section view, multi-view drawing file that we have created. One thing that we definitely want to do is duplicate this because we want two separate drawing files. We're going to dimension 2 ways. So down at the bottom on the tab, right-click on the Part Studio Drawing 1 and just choose Duplicate. Now we have 2 drawing files that are separate from one another. It takes a little bit to load, as you can see. So we have 2 separate drawing files, and you might want to actually go through and rename one. So I'm going to rename this the chain dimension drawing file. And I'm going to do that one in chains. And for this one, I'm going to rename it the Datum Dimensioning drawing file. And I'll do that one with Datum Dimensioning. So if we go over here to the chain dimension drawing, one thing is that we never dimension the section view. We're never going to dimension that. There's no need for that. So in fact, we could even delete it. So get rid of that. That might help just to give us some extra room for what we're working on. Make sure we add all of the components that are needed in a drawing file. For starters, we need center marks to be added to all of these circular features. So let's locate the center mark. If I look over here toward the right, I do see one that looks pretty close to what I'm looking for, and that is the center mark. So let's go ahead and choose that, and then select on each of the circles. And so we certainly have our center marks. All right, so this is the chain dimensioning file that we're working on. So from the left edge to this center mark of the first hole feature, we're going to dimension that. That's that 1 inch that we know we placed. Next up in the chain, we would just dimension from right from that center mark to the next center mark. Now, it looks like they're going to overlap one another, so I'm going to pull this one out a little bit further. And I don't see any lines helping me with some ANSI standard. It wants it to go there. Well, let's just put it there and see what happens. I don't think that looks very good. We'll come back and fix it. But in the chain, we just keep dimensioning from one center to the next. I'll just keep placing it where it tells me. One center to the next. There it is. And now we don't dimension this last center to the right edge. We don't dimension that. Instead, we need the overall dimension. And so the lines do show up to help us kind of get it in the center. Well, pick whatever looks good to you. That looks about middle to me. Okay. So we do have a bit of an issue here where there is some obvious overlapping that's going on. So I'm going to click on that 1.25 and try to drag it down just a little bit and see if I can, just kind of space these out a little more. Fascinating. Okay. So on Inventor, it wouldn't be quite like this. I think that's about as good as what we can get there. And so that's the chain dimensioning. Now, of course, we still need a couple of dimensions. We need the lower edge to the centers to show that they are 1 inch. There we go. And then in the chain, we don't have any other items to dimension from that center, so we definitely want the overall height here. Okay, so keeping in mind we omit one piece of the chain and make sure to include the overall height. And then lastly, we would include the overall depth of this part. And that would be chain dimensioning. So you might think about pausing the video here, and maybe you feel pretty confident about datum dimensioning. So you could certainly try that out on your own. Otherwise, our chain dimensioning is done. Keep watching the video. We'll head on over and finish off the datum. So keep in mind this was a copy of what we had before. So when we come in here, let's go ahead and delete that section view. And now we still need to do all of those same things like adding the center marks. So we could have perhaps waited to duplicate until we had some things that we wanted to use in both versions. All right, so we have our center marks in place. Now we're going to use this lower left corner to use as our datum, So now when we go to dimension, everything is going to get dimensioned from this left edge. So left edge to that first center is 1 inch. The next one will also go from that left edge to the next center. And so they will kind of stack on top of each other or kind of nest, you might say. And from the left edge to the last center. And then, of course, the overall width. All right, so just trying to get them to kind of stack. That's the datum dimensioning for the widths on this particular part. So let's go ahead and do the datum for the heights. Everything is getting dimensioned from the bottom edge. So from the bottom edge to the centers, there we go. And then we would go from the bottom edge to whatever's next. In this case, it's the top. It's the final dimension. And then lastly, if there were any pieces on the depth, we would want to make sure we basically operated the same way to dimension everything from that bottom left edge. In this case, it is strictly one dimension to complete there. So this would be datum dimensioning, and that would be everything. So thanks for coming and checking this out. I'll see you in the next video.